we're going to do a little bit more of a retrospective look at, well, Project Moon in general, but also Ruina, as I do something random. Let's see, what will we do? We'll do try Gebra final. I'm not expecting to beat this, by the way. What I kind of want to talk about is kind of the concept of luck is a skill. Because Project Moon honestly embodies this concept that luck is a skill. Yes, you can just blindly run at each thing, and you could rely solely on your luck. That is a possibility. Not entirely ideal, but you can do that. And each card does have luck involved. There's variance. Let's use Inner Andor, Arbor, for example. You could get 4 and 6, assuming you don't have any other buffs that changes your dice rolls. Or you can get 9 and 10. You could work purely off of the numbers alone. But what makes things interesting is you don't have just the numbers alone. For example, if you were to just go blindly into, let's say this. Bloodstained Hunt. Without really acknowledging your setup. We'll ignore, like, this tree. Like, passives. The stuff that, you know, allows you to manipulate the odds in your favor. And you just go full aggro. That, a lot of times, even if you use the best cards, you're not going to win. You might get far. You might do damage, but you're not going to win by doing stupid strats, as I'm going to call them. You need to have a plan and a strategy. You can't just play the best cards and win. Honestly, there is no one best card. There's a couple of good cards, like, let's say, Sturdy Defense. Sturdy Defense is one of the best defensive cards and mass attack cards in the game. Especially mass simultaneous, because I think it has, like, one of the highest single maximum values that is not of a mass attack. Like, let's say, this has, like, or, you know, an ego page. I do think it beats out an ego page. 10, 17, 10, 27, 33. That barely doesn't pass out of an ego It passed out some eco pages at like 30 some odd. $33. So it's about on the same level of an ego page, but it has a lot less investment than an ego page. And most ego pages only have like it out once. Hell, even most mass attack pages only have it as 1 dice. Which makes this also good for mass individual, like this page, because of its high range. This is a really good card. You can't win on this card alone. It's a tool in your toolbox. Another example is, Geba's Prowess, or Mio's Prowess. Really, it's plus 3 synergy with Geba. Like, this is a permanent plus 5. You can't win just on that alone. You do a lot, but you can't win on that alone, and you can't use... And it doesn't work during mass attack, which is still get stuff like, the passive +1s, and Fervor, the one I usually have on most units. I don't have it on every unit right now, because... Actually, I think I do have it on every unit. Except, you have Fervor baked in. Except for Gebra, who has pretty much maxed out everything her tree because of, her costs. Due to, like, Prowess being, like, 5, this being 5, and this is a really good page for early... To really get Gebra team off the going, because they're very late game heavy. You can't just rely on your luck. Luck is a skill, and one you can take advantage of via buffs, like let's say purple tears, the stances, they get like a +1, a +2, or a +1 if you just switch them, which can push the odds in your favor. You can just use a better page for that situation, and you can sometimes get win against stronger pages because they rolled lower, or you roll higher, but generally you want to use the best page for your situation, whatever that may be. In my case, like, well, I've already kind of set up my best pages, but also, yeah, but there's also, like, support pages, like Fiery Dragon Slash, which is good as like a 2 cost that does 3 dice and gives counter dice. That can help. And there's also other support pages. Overcome Crisis is probably... If you've seen my videos, I've used basically ever since I got it. Okay, you can't really tell about videos because I haven't recorded the entire game, and I'm not doing that. I've used Overcome Crisis a lot. It is arguably one of the best support draw pages, because it's 0 cost. It's 2 to 7 is average, and if you're at 25% health, why? First off, why? 2, you get extra light, and not very noticeable outside of the archetype it's meant for, which is Chi Association, which is specialized at low health. They start with less HP, but also have higher maxes. I believe I used one of them in this fight in my initial playthrough. I could be very wrong. It's been a while, and I don't quite pay attention to those videos when I put them on sometimes, because they're They're interesting to watch. Honestly, my Ruina contest is probably my favorite to passively watch. Another case of luck be a skill is the dice itself, the speed dice. Yes, you can sometimes get very, very screwed over by just having, like, low numbers, but you can also, another thing you can manipulate. And generally you'll get a variant. We're kind of a bad situation being two characters with 4, but granted, I don't think you have, like, a very high speed variance. I remember getting, like, higher than 4 or 5. 6 is very high. 8 is, like, very specific pages will give you 8, or like, not ego page, key pages will give you 8 as a variance. Red Mist is, like, probably the best, like, the only one I can really think that has a full 8 variants. Usually it's, like, 4 to 5, 4 to 6 variants. Gebra has 1 to 8. And there's some things you can do. Key pages of another thing, and also your resistances. Again, we're kind of ignoring the passive tree outside of, like, fervor and whatnot. But your resistances also have a kind of a really big impact. It's rare to see on players' units. It's rare to see, or like most non-boss units, I should say. It's rare to see, like, higher than an Endure on something. But that Endure, that is, like, I think that is 50% less damage. 50% less damage. And in fact, like, it's a 20% less damage, I want to say. And immunity is just immunity. Or, like, 20% of the damage. You take 80% less damage from it. A lot of bosses have ineffective. But your resistance is another thing you can play around. You may not be able to break the dice, but you can, let's say, use your slash resistant user to take the aggro, reduce the damage that you would have been taking, and it's something you can recover from overall. And other stuff like the passives, we're gonna, Gebra example. I think my current Gebra page is maybe not the best. Is a good example. You have stuff, yes, purple tier. Give me certain passives to, like, boost your odds or boost the battle in your favor. One of the best ones are honestly battle ready. Another thing, I guess another thing in randomness is your card draw. You start with, I guess I use draw. You start with 4 cards in hand. You have a 9-card deck, and you can have a maximum of 8 cards, so you can have 90% of your deck in hand. But if you, in early game, it's really a problem, because you don't really have draw power early game. But you can, just like in Yu-Gi-Oh, or like a lot of card games in general, the best way to make your deck more consistent, especially if we're going for, like, singleton deck like I am with this, is draw power. The best way for consistency is draw power. Because a lot of things that I see be a bit of a misconception that some people have with card games is that it is pure luck. It's just a top deck battle. That's not often the case. There's... You can do that, again, you can slot in the best cards in the game. You still have limited by light, but you could just put in the best cards in the game. But if your deck has no synergy with itself, and you can't, you know, get the cards you need, Ruina is not a good example of this, because if it's a 9-card deck, you have arguably the most amount of consistency possible, but you can get beat out by luck. I have done it before, when I really needed poor card draw. When I really needed a sturdy defense, I just couldn't grab it. That is something that's possible, but you can also work around it. It's not... You're more battling yourself. You're, I guess, it's deck building. You can build a deck to fit basically any situation you want. For example, I mainly have like a hybrid burn bleed team. And there's archetypes as well. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a lot of archetypes. This game also has less archetypes. Mostly fitting into either like slash, pierce, or blunt, or kind of a mixture of them. Usually will be a mixture of them. Or stuff like resonance, or not resonance, bleed or burn or paralyze. Paralyze kind of middling. Or like certain status effect like other status effects like enfeeblement, which lowers feeble, which lowers your opponent's strength dice. Fragile, which lowers their makes the enemy take more damage. I forget what the defensive down is. And then there's bind. There's a lot of potential strategy you can do. And that's something that also I feel gets carried over really well to Limbus Company. Limbus Company is also not very balanced, as it turns out. But it is also has an embodiment of luck as a skill. You could wallow that you're getting bad draw, or you could or bad coins. But you could also need to. You could just, if you play Limbus like I do, I should say, and you're not just hitting win rate on constantly, you have to take the odds in consideration. They're not something that's supposed to punish you. Like, I feel a lot of games, luck is just there to punish you. Like, a miss in Mega 10, like, it can be game ending. A lot of the times. And a lot of times that luck is detrimental. In Project Moon, and even like in the first game, it had a lot less of these luck be a skill elements. There are a lot of abnormalities. You take what your abnormalities from extraction, what values you get from each stuff, and even the risk and whatnot. You have to play into the odds in that game, but it's less. But it never feels like luck is punishing. And there's times, but like the most recent time I can think of is when I was fighting Blue Reverberance during the main playthrough, because I forgot that, very poorly mind you, I forgot that Lone Fixer was a passive that exists that gives you a permanent +3. Instead, I went for the gamble option. Admittedly stupid. And I won by luck. But if you play your cards right, and you remember that certain pages exist, you can do pretty well at parts that you would have otherwise not have. For a reason or another. And we'll do you. But yeah, luck is a skill you have to... doesn't feel punishing. And some of that is that the loss... We'll say the downsides of getting unlucky isn't as punishing. We'll say. One way to make luck not feel overbearing is to limit the risk for of failure, or the detriment of failure. For example, partly because passive that heals, but I don't feel at limit. I didn't take that much damage, despite, you know, I did definitively take damage. But I didn't take that much damage overall. I took, like, 20% of my gauge. Or, like, a small chunk of my gauge. My stun gauge. Stagger resist. There's... the gauge is called stagger resist, and then there's stagger resist resistances. I don't know. I just find that wording funny. But a lot of times, the way to make luck not that punishing is to not make the risk of the cost of failure death. And a lot of games do not follow that philosophy. A lot of times, like I said, using Megatenor for example again, a lot of that game is very punishing for being unlucky. The one miss could spell the end of your run. And then yeah, variance is another thing. Variance in that case isn't exactly the problem. It's more of a problem in Pokemon. But, one miss could spell the end. And that is honestly a bit too punishing. Mario Party is kind of a very infamous example of this. Yes, because it's a very heavy luck-based game. You could do everything right, win almost every minigame, and you could still lose. Due to poor luck. Which I do not like. It's mass individual. Great. Lovely. That Mario Party is a very extreme example of luck being a bit too punishing. Ruina, I feel, has a pretty good balance. I'm probably gonna get... Well, we'll see how well we deal with a roided out Crimson Scar. Yeah, luck is a skill. I guess that's kind of the moral of the story. And you're gonna be utilizing to make it it could be somewhat misinterpreted, like, oh, it's like because a lot of times luck is out of some skills. So I guess I can dive into a bit of what luck as a skill really means. Time for roid rated. Crimson. Ironically, this is I pretty much have the same deck as I did. Okay, yeah, no, +7 is pretty dangerous. I shouldn't discount that. But luck is something you can play around, is kind of the point I'm trying to get across. It is not something you can't manage or handle. You can play around it. Ow. I'm gonna lose. I mostly just wanted to have some background footage, honestly. But yeah, luck is a skill. And nuts. Yes, variances going to there's always going to be luck, but you can play the odds in your favor. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to get across, in my very poor way. And that's something a lot of Project Moon embodies. even in the unluckiest situations, you can still even when the odds aren't in your favor, you can still outplay the odds. And it's kind of why I feel, despite everything being luck-based in this game, pretty much, in some form, it feels like the odds are in your favor most of the time. Because a lot of the time, because if you play your cards right, the odds are in your favor. Even if they are random, they are in your favor. Because you can play smarter than your opponent. In this, you can smarter than the game. You can redirect your most offensive unit in the situation and just take the damage if you can't outright avoid it. You can do all these things to basically get the odds in your favor, manipulate the odds to be in your favor, and I really like that. A lot of games are too. Let's say it's another indie game, Blatro. It's a poker game, so and poker's inherently luck-based, but you can do a lot of stuff to. No hand is unwinnable in that game. And that is no setup is unwinnable. And that is a very true statement. It's Blatro is a game where luck is very much as a skill. You can, and one you can manipulate. Every hand is winnable. You just need to play your cards right. And I find that very, very interesting. If my little rant discussion on the topic isn't any indication, I do genuinely like the concept of luck being something you can control. It's not something overwhelming to the point where it defines the game, like, let's say, Mario Party, or Dokapon Kingdom, or I'm trying to think of another very heavily luck-based real-life gambling. Don't do that. The house always wins for a reason. But there's a lot of things you can genuinely do to get the odds to be in your favor in this game, and in Blatro, and in Olympus Company. Even a bad setup with the right plays, even base identities, I would say. Well, sometimes. There are some cases, Ricardo being an extreme example of which, you need to do other. Is a bit of an extreme example. But otherwise, you can play the odds in your favor, beat the odds, overcome luck. It is a factor. It's a factor you can control, though. You don't... If you don't think you can win the coin flip, unless you absolutely have to, you don't have to play the coin flip. That coin flip. You could do something else. You can use ego, you can use your defensive dice. You could do or defensive coins, and skills and Limbus, or your defensive dice and Ruina, or your ego pages, or use, and even the most luck-based thing, I would say, because, you know, you see now, it's hard to try to get amounts of courses in my, because this is going to be up after, in between, Tactica, you already know, because, you see, this is pretty late into going up after Ruina is finished. Officially. Kind of. Unless I decide to do random challenges, like, I don't know, solo Mia against someone, or, you know, do random little mini challenges, like, mostly against Black Silence, who honestly I feel is like one of the best designed fights in this game. Still takes an hour. Though, remarkably, this game only, like, for a speedrunner, only takes 6 hours. Which is still, like, the quarter of the day, but, nah. But the biggest luck part of the game is honestly the abnormality pages. But even then, you can play them, none are outright bad. Even, like, detrimental ones like Fervent Beat isn't outright bad. There are use cases for it. Not common use cases, mind you, but there is use cases for it. Like, there's use cases for curiosity, or lies, or learning. Or, like, any leer, guilt, hell, even time has its uses. Yes, they're not optimal, but you also get 3 choices. You don't have to pick up time. You don't have to pick up vengeance. Or rounded, or waltz, or even have to deal with bleed, or blood. Using Gebra for example. Even when something seems bad, there can be, and oh, I'm unlucky for getting this. There are still use cases for them. And stuff you can do. You're never, even the worst abnormality page, the highest luck-based thing is that there's most of the factors that goes into what pages you get, be it mostly on, because of the emotion level system. If you want a specific type of page, unless it's like, unless it's of the thing you're, positive emotion, which tends to be picked a lot more often with endgame setups, because you don't want your dice to fail a lot of the time, or take damage. They can be hard to get, but you can also play to them, and there's always a chance you get at least one. Outside, like, very early game, I don't think I've noticed a run where it was only, unless it's, you know, specifically, unless it's like Gebra pages, like rank 3 pages where they're all positive emotion pages. You can very easily play things to your advantage. You're not locked out of these pages. You do have to get lucky, but you can also play around the other pages. Nothing is outright terrible that it's detrimental if you grab it. There can be times where things is detrimental, like Mountain of Corpses in a 3-act. Unless it counts as for all 3. Or, I guess... Prey against multiple enemies. Or... Absorption in a 3-act battle. There are bad options, but they're never a detrimental. There can be times where they're more useful than others. Like the Beast, for example. It can be... There's a lot in this game that is yes, luck dependent. The abnormality page you get, ego page you get, which you'll actually probably see all of them over the course of a game, or full round to rank 5. Abnormality pages, the dice, they're all stuff you can control to an extent. Nothing is outright out of your control. You can do a lot to work around these problems, which I just find that interesting in my inane ramblings. This is completely unscripted, obviously. I don't do scripted content. I like going on tangents and whatnot, if you can tell through my video style. I don't tend to do stuff like this very often, but I do like it. But even the worst case scenario stuff, it's still mostly in your control. The example was like Gebra suppression. Like I could have attacked Crimson Scar and not go full aggro onto the wolf. I could have done any number of things, but I chose to do that, and I got punished for it. But it was a choice I made. The luck is interesting. It was very interesting. There are times where it's done really well. I have 200 out, like 100. 175 hours in this game for a reason. And also like 200 in Limbus Company, I believe. Because Project Moon does luck very well. And then there's games that do it poorly. Random crits, for example, in TF2 being a very, like, a notable example, because everybody, when they're on the mostly when they're on the receiving end, but everybody and the mother complains about random crits and TF2. Or, again, Megaten's missing being extremely detrimental and sometimes game ruining. Especially in 3 and Nocturne, because of that game it's very jank in areas, especially in its accuracy. Yeah, that game can be very jank. Mario Party is another really good example where luck can be really overbearing. But again, luck is but in a lot of times, luck is a skill. You can manipulate the odds to be in your favor. And I say that. There's literally a skill called manipulation of odds. But it's not one of many ways in this game to actually manipulate the odds. The odds aren't overbearing. You won't just lose off of a dice roll not going your way a lot of the times. You need multiple dice to, or have a poor strategy or a poor setup to actually lose a lot of the time. You might lose by death by paper cuts. That is totally a possibility, just as you can win by paper cuts. I've done that a lot in this game. I've done that a lot in Limbus, because I use Blade Team. But it's never outright... Nothing is outright out of your control. A lot of the time. I don't know, I just find this interesting. Thanks for listening to my inane ramblings for half an hour. I just find things interesting. To whoever may bring. Till then.